Okay, Selina, we'll start. I'm Nikki, the Senior Librarian at Tararua District Library. We're in Dannevirke, which is halfway between the Bay and the Manawatu.
Gorgeous.
And these children are the lovely children from Huia Range School, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Beautiful.
Hi, I'm Asia.
Asia. Hi, Asia.
I'm Nick.
Kia ora, Nick.
I'm Cassidy.
Talofa Cassidy.
And I'm Paige.
Sorry?
And I'm Paige.
Paige. Hiya, Paige.
Okay, lovely to meet you, Selina.
It's so great to be here. It's, well, in my own kitchen with my puppies running around crazy, but you guys look so great.
Thank you. Yes.
I love that world map on the back of the wall.
Yes, we did that for one of our digital programs with the children had on their, they had, what do you call them, the QR codes. And they'd scan the QR codes and find on the map where that was.
That's gorgeous. Usually the Pacific is only tiny wee little dots, and I've got a map where the Pacific is the center of the world's map and everything else is in correct proportion to all the other countries, because usually, you know, England and Europe are huge.
Yes. Yeah, lovely.
Kia ora, Selina. Congratulations on being a finalist in the Book Post Awards. This is Steve.
Rachel, kia ora, Steve. Kia ora, Rachel.
And we're from Nelson Public Libraries. And these are our three wonderful students. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves to Selina?
I'm Amy.
Oh.
Hello for Amy.
Okay.
I'm Sam.
Hello for Sam.
And I'm Ava.
Sorry?
And I'm Ava.
Ava. Hello for Ava. Lovely to meet you all. I love Nelson. I've run those streets. It's beautiful.
Oh, well, you're welcome to come and see us anytime you're in
Yeah.
Great. So should we get started?
Yes.
I hear that you're going to give us you're going to read to Mophead.
I'm going to read a couple of pages, about 16 pages. So I'm going to share my scroll. So first, talofa lava, volavanaka, maloelele, kia orana, whakalofalahi atu, namaste. Warm Pacific greetings to you all. I'm talking to you from Waiheke Island, population 8,000. It is a windy, blustery day, but the sky is blue. And last night, my husband David and Tana, our rescue dog, caught 3 snapper off the beach. Wow. So we had fish for dinner last night. It was yummy. And I'm having Weet-Bix and banana for my breakfast, since we get up and run about 5:30 in the morning. So I can let the dogs off the lead, and we have full use of all the roads and all the trails. So yeah, so that's me. And I'm really pleased to be able to read some of Mophead to you. So I'm going to share my screen and go to my, can everyone hear me nice and loud?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so Mophead. For those who stick out, how your difference makes a difference. She drew me too. When I was 10, I was teased for having big hair. Not just thick, curly hair, but wild Afakasi hair. Afakasi equals being Samoan plus something else. There's my Samoan mum, my European dad, and me. I got thick, wavy hair from my Samoan Tuvaluan mum, and thin, curly hair from my New Zealand, Scottish, English, French dad. That's my hair equation.
Mm-hmm.
My hair was so wild, it defied gravity and didn't come back down to earth. So big, it wouldn't fit under hats or caps. It broke the cute bows and clips other girls wore. Kids called me Mophead. I was tall, skinny, and brown like the mop in our garage. It smelled like old socks. The mop had a head made from hundreds of cotton threads and a long body made of wood. Being called Mophead made me feel bad. I tried to ignore the teasing, but it just got louder. I cut it. Some kids called me Fuzzy Wuzzy, Gollywog. I wore it in plaits like Pippi Longstocking. Some kids called me Pippi Blackstocking. So I tied it back in a tight bun. No one called me anything then. I was the same. But we're not made to be the same. At home, I'd let my hair out and be a champion rider. Go, Black Beauty. A chart-topping singer. Ain't no mountain high enough. Or a record-breaking explorer. Come on, Ed. Coming. But at school, it was a different story. Then one day, a famous poet visited our school. Hi guys, I'm Sam. He was tall and thin. He had wild hair and wild words. They know the way a mountain laughs. Sam was not the same. He loved being different. The kids loved it too. Bye, Sam. Write me a poem. Do you think he brushes his hair? Could I do that? We were the same kind of different. Tall, tick. Thin, tick. Wild hair, tick. Sings words, tick. Red car, cross. Dog called minstrel, cross. That's when I decided I wouldn't be tied back. I was going wild. And to find the rest of the story, you're going to have to read the book.
Yes, we do have it.
You have it. Excellent.
Yes, yes.
Thanks.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you, Selina. Wonderful reading. We'll start off with who arranged children asking you some questions first, if you wouldn't mind. Okay, so Asia.
I'm very impressed by the questions, by the way. Like, they're more critical than adult questions. It's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. Why did you decide to share your story?
Well, Asia, I decided to share my story because I didn't see it out there on library shelves. I wanted to read about my life, and I got a little bit tired of never seeing myself in stories and in book pages. And instead of kind of staying disappointed and miffed or trying to reimagine myself and other characters all the time, which was wonderful, but to have to do it all the time became a bit tiresome, I decided to do something about it. There's a famous African-American author called Toni Morrison who has written about the lives of African American women in particular and children in particular. And when she was asked the same question, she said, I just wrote what I wanted to read. So I wanted to read about a girl who wouldn't let other people's labels of her define her. That's a great question, Asia. Yeah. Thank you.
What
Nick,
what advice would you give to younger children getting bullied?
what advice would I give to?
Younger children getting bullied.
Yeah. So one of the big challenges I had at your age was that I'd start things with a rush and a roar and super enthusiastic, and I just, I'd begin with so much energy, but then I kind of quickly grew bored and would seldom finish anything. So hands up if you've ever done that. You've started something off and it's like, yeah. And then you've just kind of petered out, right?
Yeah,
You're not finished. Yeah. And so part of my own challenge, which is both my strength and my weakness, is that I'm a perfectionist. And so, being a perfectionist means that you do everything with the most effort, your best enthusiasm, your best so you start off really strongly, but then your standards can be so high that nothing's ever perfect or right enough. And so I'd make my own books from about the age of 8, and I'd get through to the middle and I just think, no, I can't do it. I can't finish it. The pictures aren't good enough. The story's not good enough. I'm just going to leave it. And so I seldom finished a book. So my advice to, young writers is try as hard as possible to just reach the end, because once you have a complete work, then a kind of magic internal door opens up and you can see the possibilities. You can see the whole thing and you can begin to shape it as an entire book. But if you never complete anything, it kind of saps you of the motivation to complete anything else. You kind of get into the habit of not finishing stuff, yeah? And so that's why I love poetry, because I can complete one poem in one sitting. I don't think I'll ever be a novelist. I'd get too bored and I'd find lots of detours. And, there's something about when you finish something, you want to start and finish something else. And then you want to start and finish something else, because it's hugely satisfying to have that completed thing. So even if you start off with a 3-lined haiku, it's a little pocket of completion that motivates you to begin and finish something else. Yeah. So that would be my top tip for young writers. But the second one, and whereas I always have my journal close by, is that I write stuff down all the time, and I keep my journals on me all the time. And I've got big A4 journals, tiny little notebooks, they're just scattered everywhere, because whenever I walk, I like to make notes. I've just got them everywhere, because oftentimes you think that you'll remember something, like you'll have a thought or a line will come to you when you look at something, or you're being a bit nosy and you can overhear people's conversations and you think, wow, that's a really interesting turn of phrase. I need to write it down. And that's what I do. That's my number one tip. And a beautiful Hawaiian writer years and years ago gave me that tip, and I've never forgotten it, and I've always practiced it, because it's like collecting diamonds, and they're lying in the dirt around you, and you can just see a glint or a little shine, and that's the beginning of an idea or a line or of a poem. And so you have to be really careful and collect them, and be a really good observer of the life that you're living around you. Yeah, good question, Nick.
Wonderful, thank you.
What inspired you to let your hair loose?
What inspired me to what, Cassidy?
Let your hair loose.
what inspired you to let your hair loose?
Haha. I guess you know how when you're at school, you mostly want to be the same. You don't want to have attention brought to you for anything that's particularly different, you know. And so, and I wanted that too. I did not want to stick out until I realized that forcing myself to be the same as everyone was making me sad and frustrating me. Like, why should I be this amazing, colorful, imaginative person just at home? And yet when I'm at school and I put my uniform on, I'm kind of like hiding that light. And I just grew impatient with that. And I grew a little bit sad about it. And then I grew angry about it. I don't know, well, I don't want you to compromise yourself, but do you know what I mean when I say the word frenemy?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me what a frenemy is.
It's kind of someone that you're kind of friends with, but at the same time they can kind of be a bit like they're not really your friend.
Yeah, well, I had a best friend who was my frenemy. So when she was happy with me, I had the best time at school. You know, she just made life really bright and colourful and easy. But when excuse me, just decline that. But when she turned on me, she really turned on me. And she came up with the nickname Mophead that stuck. And that, you know, I've reclaimed Mophead. It's a beautiful name now for me. It's the name of my beloved character. But at school, it was the worst. Like, I got teased Mophead all the time. No one even knew what my proper name was. Wow. And so before I published Mophead, one of my old school friends was like, I gave her the manuscript to read and I wanted to get her opinion, because that's really important too, to share your writing, not just when you finished it, but while you're in the middle of it, and, you know, get the opinion of people that you trust and people whose work you admire. Don't just get the opinion of anybody, because everyone's got an opinion. And I really admired her writing. So I sent it to her and she said, I love it, Selina, but do you really want to title it with the name that caused you so much pain at school? And I went, it is the only way I can reclaim that name, that I can reclaim it and be powerful and not let it define me in a negative way. And that's what the story's about, right? How your difference makes the difference. So that was like my response to that bullying. But, you know, that bullying started when I was in primary school, and I've just written it. It's taken a long time. You know, it's like 40 years later. And not that bullying has defined who I am, but it's a story that I've reclaimed. And for me, stories are always about taking control of your voice, your visibility, your imagination, you know. And in this instance, because it's a memoir and it's a true story, it means it's a true story. So these girls here, I don't know if, so, you know, I'm saying I wore my hair wild at school, and at school I was voted in as head girl, and these three girls really wanted to be head girl, and I did not.
They're like actually based off real people. Like,
yes, they are actually based on real people. And it's funny because they kind of look like them a little bit. So one of them says, Mophead's been made head girl, and the middle one says, but she didn't even campaign for it. And the last one says, and she's not in proper school uniform. So I would try to, like, basically they would say those kind of things, but I try not to like cast them as the mean girls. But actually they were like that at school, and I was painting an art mural on a school wall at the time, and I was like, really? you know, and I was so out of the box. I didn't even think that being head girl was an option for me, you know. But the principal saw how my difference made a difference with my peers, with the people around me. So, you know, these girls kind of had their own sameness, and their uniform was always perfect. And I think they wanted the school to kind of go in a different direction a little bit.
Selina, do you think those girls would recognise themselves if they read your book?
Well, actually, I met one of them at uni, and she said, "I love the story. It was so great." And I was with my husband because we went to the same school together, and we were just cracking up. We were like, you know, so no, I don't think they.
No, okay.
But I know that someone else had a question about bullying. I think one of Steve's students had a question about bullying while we're on the topic.
I think Asia had a question. What
would you say to all the people who were who like bullied you and teased you about your hair? What would you say to them, like, right now after?
What would I say to them right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the beauty is I don't have to say a thing. Like, like I'm, you know, I mean, it's since lockdown, I've just twined my hair because it was just easier to look after it. But my work speaks for itself, you know. My public reputation speaks for itself, and I'm known now for this big hair, you know, when I haven't twined it. And it's like, it's the sweetest revenge. Not that I set out to get revenge, but just being happy and successful and following your passion is the best kind of response to any kind of bullying. You know, when you actually celebrate that very thing that people tried to kind of make you feel small and stink about yourself. So I don't have to say anything. And you know, Mophead actually says it all, and that's the beauty of story again, you know, so that those stories can be used for good, if you like, you know.
Yes.
Because writing stories for me, it's all about healing, you know, and healing yourself and healing the world, just making everything better, brighter, more beautiful. And that means not just talking about bright, beautiful things. It means talking about the painful things, the hard things. Because if another person who's going through a hard thing recognizes themselves or a little bit of themselves in that story, then my job as a writer is done. Yeah. And I was in Whanganui before the book was published, and I read out some of the manuscript to an audience just to road test it. So you know how as a writer I'd like to, you know, get a response to people to see if I'm going in the right direction. And Mophead is about a Pacific Island girl, you know, an Afakasi, a half-caste girl who's different. And when I finished reading the manuscript, a big man at the back of the hall stood up, and he had bright red hair and a long red beard, and he said, "That's my story." Oh. And that's when I knew I'd hit the gold, right, the jackpot, when my story is specifically Pacific, but universal enough to appeal to anyone, you know, through a range of themes.
Yeah.
Cool.
What were your thoughts when you saw your toko toko for the first time?
Say that again, Ava. Oh, no, not Ava. Is it Ava or Paige? Paige. Yes.
What were your thoughts when you saw your toko toko for the first time?
What were my thoughts when
you saw the toko toko for the first time?
Oh, my God. Oh, I burst into tears.
Oh.
Here she is. I burst into tears. And you know, it's funny because a friend of mine said, "Oh, you're turning into the toko toko now. Like these are entwined fibers of the coconut tree, and my hair's like entwined fibers of my head." And this is my walking, talking library. You know, during my 2-year reign as Poet-Laureate, I visited 11 countries and 32 cities and towns across the world. And people were just fascinated and wanted to hear the stories behind each of its 11 pieces. And so it hasn't been just a trophy that you display. I take this with me, and because I can break it apart, it comes apart in 11 pieces. It fits in my backpack, and we just go, we walk. So I felt hugely honoured, and it was kind of a real recognition of my own identity as a creative person, as a poet. Yeah. So, and Jacob Scott the carver carved its name into the wood. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got carved in there, Tusitala ka pura. And Tusitala is the Samoan word for, anyone know what that is the Samoan word for? So Tusi means to write, and tala means to tell. So it's so loosely it means storyteller or teller of tales.
So it's like, in the book it says your name is like Selina Tusitala Marsh. So did you just put that in there because it like describes you?
So that Tusitala is my grandfather's name. So it's this incredible legacy. It's like been this little prophecy that I've, that's been revealed to me as I've grown up. I didn't set out to be a storyteller. And there's a question about early books that influenced me. So I dug up one of my first books. This is Treasure Island, and the author is Robert Louis Stevenson. This book was published in 1956.
Oh, wow.
And Robert Louis Stevenson was a famous Scottish author. Anyone heard of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Jekyll and Hyde, maybe. The adults. Well, he wrote that very famous story too. But Treasure Island is like full of pirates and mysterious old men and bad pirates and good pirates and a cabin boy called Jim. But I used to pretend to be Jim.
Yes.
And Robert Louis Stevenson lived his last few years, 6 years or so, in Samoa. And he was this famous storyteller, and so the Samoan chiefs named him Tusitala, the storyteller. And my grandfather was named after Robert Louis Stevenson because, when Samoans, like many Pacific Islanders, keep their histories in their language. So what they name places and people helps record the history. So we know that the people my grandfather's age, there were many people called Tusitala to mark the coming and the living amongst them of Robert Louis Stevenson. So it's so cool that I'm a Tusitala as a Pacific Island woman, and Robert Louis Stevenson was this very famous Scottish male Tusitala or teller of tales.
Wonderful.
Wow. Okay.
Shall I show you actually some of the other books that really influenced me when I was your age?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the adults would have heard of Pam Ayres.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, so when I read poetry, I like to rhyme and I like the rhythm. So this is Pam Ayres. It's not the original one I had. This is the sequel. But she wrote poems with pictures. So, for example, this poem is called The Flit Gun. My mother had a flit gun. It was not devoid of charm. A bit of flit shot out of it. The rest shot up her arm. The Pam Ayres, I took from Pam Ayres her cheekiness, her humour, her love of rhythm and rhyme, yeah? And then, Spike Milligan, Bad Jelly, the Witch. Hands up if you've read this book. Oh my gosh, you are in for a treat. So this comes with a CD where Spike Milligan is reading his stories. But I want you to tell me, why you think, or how you think Spike Milligan influenced me. I'm just going to show you the pages. This is Pom Pom, the doggy who played the piano with his tail. So this was the first book. Oh, that's Fluffy Bum the cat. So this is the first book that I ever owned that was brand new, and my dad bought it for me. Spike Milligan wrote the story. This is Spike Milligan's handwriting, and Spike Milligan also drew the pictures. This is Lucy the cow. See the little SM?
Yes.
And that seed, the fact that you could write a book and not just tell a story, but write and draw the pictures yourself, that seed was planted when I was 8.
Yeah. So,
And I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so it's amazing to be able to hold these two books together, 40 years later and think, wow, I did it. And this is why it's so important for you to keep reading and inputting creativity, because you never know when it's going to rise up inside you. You never know when you're going to actually kind of do it, isn't it? I'm coming to get you. That's Bad Jelly the Witch and not Dinglebolt, Dinglebolt the mouse.
So did you draw all of the pictures in Mophead?
I did draw all the pictures, yeah. And when I was talking to my publisher about it, and a publisher is someone who decides whether they're going to make your manuscript into a book, because it costs a lot of money to turn an idea into a book. He said to me, we love your pictures, but we can easily pay a professional children's illustrator to do the pictures. And I was like, no, my role model is, Spike Milligan wasn't an artist. Well, he is in my eyes, but, he wasn't a professional artist. And I said, the whole thing with Mophead is that it's my story. So not just my written line, but my drawn line. It's really important because part of the message is, if I can do it, you can do it. Yeah?
Yes.
So do we need some questions from the top left-hand corner?
Start with Ava, if you could go first.
Hi, Ava.
Hi. What was your favourite thing about writing Mophead?
My favourite thing was drawing, was scribbling, and also learning about myself as I did it. So, for example, see her here? This hair has been drawn and redrawn hundreds of times. Like, how I said I was a perfectionist before? When I first drew Mophead's hair, I was like trying to do the curls so perfectly and ordered, and, so it all looked like a beautiful pattern. And I kept scribbling out and starting again because I thought, no, that's not it. That's not it. And then I realized that mistakes are made for making. That her hair is a mistake, that it had to be wild and scribbly because that's who she was. She wasn't like a perfect ringlety character, and neither am I, and if you're too scared to make mistakes, then you'll never make anything. So that's part of the process. And now I really embrace mistakes, and that's helped me kind of smooth out the edges, the harder edges of being a perfectionist. I let myself make mistakes now. So that was the most fun part in writing Mophead. And coming up with this little character too. She's called Mini Mophead, and she features in book number 2. Yeah. Yes, there is a book number 2 coming out.
You guys.
Sam, do you have a question?
Do Do you listen to music or anything when you are writing poetry or drawing?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So when it depends on what kind of writing I'm doing. So when I was drawing Mophead, I would listen to love songs from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But when I was refining the drawings, and because people would give me feedback, when I was refining the drawings, I'd listen to concentration music. So it might be kind of an orchestral kind of music, or music just with a beat, and it would keep me. It kind of helps your brain think critically and creatively. So no words, it would just be kind of rhythmic, almost trance-like music, like boom, 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 you know. And that kind of helped me focus.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bang.
Who do you look up to?
Sorry, what was that? Is it Amy or Ava?
Amy.
Who do you look up to?
Oh, well, one of the people I look up to is this guy, Sam Hunt. And because we've been poets together, that's really what he looks like, essentially, you know. And because as poets, we've performed in the same spaces, but we've never been able to sit down and have a really good corridor or talk. And 2 months ago, my sister and I drove up from Auckland to Kaipara Harbour to meet him, and we spent the day with him. And it was like, you know, spending the day with my poetry idol. And it was really wonderful because he is exactly who he seems to be. So, you know, when you like see famous people and you're like, are they really like that?
Yeah.
Well, Sam is really like that. And there was not one conversation that we had where he didn't just burst into a poem that he memorized. Because he's memorized because I asked him, how many do you think? And he reckons he knows 10,000 poems by memory.
Wow.
My goodness.
And that's why I've performed with him on stage, and he's like, any requests, and someone can say, you know, say a poem by an Irish poet, Seamus Heaney, Shakespeare. No, and he's just like, bang, he can perform it. It's amazing. And I think that's one of the beauties that poetry offers too, is that they are condensed, finished pieces of work that you can actually commit to memory. And something very special happens when you do memorize your poem. And what I find myself is that it starts speaking back to me in my life. Like I'll recall a line when I'm in like the supermarket, and I'll like, oh, that's another way you can understand that line. Because, you know, words are worlds. Words are worlds. And there's only the difference of one letter between those two words, word and world, and it completely changes your engagement with them, right? And so, you know, that's the magic that being a poet and, you know, enjoying language and having words to use as your tool to make stuff in the world. That's the beauty of it for me.
Oh.
Are there other questions?
Yeah,
Ava's got another
we've got a
one.
couple of others here.
What was it like going through the old photos for the back cover of the book?
Yeah, like it was funny actually, because that's me first year of intermediate school. So you can see my Mophead there. And I saw that kid, and I thought, wow, I'm so glad that you had a bit of fight in you, that you didn't let the teasing make you sad or depressed or angry to the point where you just let it defeat you. But there's some there's some spunk and light in that face, and I feel quite proud. And that's a real photo of myself and Sam Hunt there.
Oh,
Yeah. And that's my English French grandmother, and her hair turned completely white when she was 21. And
Goodness.
she's got like soft. Yeah. So people often ask me, "Is this real? Is this streak real?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's real." And I'm just, I'm lucky it didn't kind of go all white, but yeah.
Was that like, did that streak just like naturally come into your hair?
Yeah.
I wanted to know.
Yeah, it happens, kids. We've got one just like it.
That's why you've got like a deeper.
Yeah.
Nice. So it was a really, it felt great to be able to look back on my life and enjoy those other moments. But I also included a poem that my son wrote for me. Can you see it there?
Yes.
And my sons aren't great at reading, so this meant a lot to me that he'd written. They don't like writing or reading, so yeah, that was precious.
Sam, your question follows up nicely from that. Okay.
What was it like meeting the Queen?
Oh my goodness! So there I am shaking her hand again. She's really little. She's really little. I'm quite a tall person. She's really little, and I remember thinking, gosh, your skin looks really soft. I was impressed with her because she has to sit and receive a lot of visitors every year, and she goes to thousands of events. And she's the longest reigning queen. And she's only had 11 sick days off in her entire life or reign of being queen. So when we were doing the dress rehearsal, do you guys know what a dress rehearsal is?
Yeah.
So it's a big practice before the actual event. So the night before I did the poem for the Queen, we were at Westminster Abbey and we did a dress rehearsal. And I was performing my poem, and one of the church elders came up to me and he said, that was very nice. Says, but perhaps you should tone it down a little, because, there'll be screens all throughout the Abbey and people will be able to see me. And I thanked him for the advice, and then he walked away. And then I had the Queen's aide, or she's got lots of aides. She has lots of helpers who just help organise her life. And he came up to me and he said, if I may offer you a bit of advice too. And I went, sure, bring it. And he was like, please ignore that man. He said, Mom receives many, goes to many events, and you can imagine how boring they get. And he said, the life that you bring to your poem would really energize the room, and also she would really appreciate you just being you. And I thought that was such a beautiful piece of advice. You just do you. You just do you. And that's what Mophead's about. You do you. When I became the Poet-Laureate, I was a bit nervous because the previous laureates had all been Pākehā men in their 70s and 80s and of a certain status in literature. And I was a bit nervous about being the next one. And the kaitiaki, or the caregiver of the laureates, said to me, Selina, you do you. That's why you were voted in. You do you. And that's kind of like the best advice I could ever give anyone, whether they're a writer or not, as a human being, because we've all got that. We've all got our unique way of being in the world, right? Mm.
Yes.
And actually, Mophead 2, it's called Mophead 2, The Queen's Poem. Oh. And it talks about the 5 rules that Mophead had to obey, and then through poetry challenged to write and perform that poem. And the 2, so why have I got 2 there after Mophead? Why do you think I've called it Mophead 2? It's what, sorry, Asia?
It's the sequel to.
It's the sequel, but guess what? Tu is spelled T-U. So tu, T-U, is the first two letters of my name. It's also a homonym for the word two, the number two, right? Homonym. And it's also the Polynesian word for, that means, does anyone know what tu means in Māori, Samoan, Tuvaluan? It means to stand. And Mophead 2 is about how where you stand makes the difference. Yeah, where you stand. So I talk about standing, you know, as a Pacific Islander, and also, you know, in Westminster Abbey performing for the Queen.
Wonderful.
What's the release date of that again?
October. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, October. Yeah, and then, and I've got, so, and my idea for Mophead 3 is going to be called Mophead and the Mutt.
Yeah, so cute.
But my first one, but he's just been chewing on my skirt as I've been speaking. Haven't you, Aries? Haven't you? Yeah.
Oh, he's precious.
Going.
So actually, so writers are always thinking. Writers are always thinking, making, creating, and I like have 20 ideas a week, and I have to capture it in these notebooks, right? Because I don't know when I might return to them. But for me, it's like that's such an important step, to be thinking something up here. The second step is to write it down, because it somehow makes it more concrete and possible to then develop it into something that might be not just begun, but have a middle and an ending as well.
Wonderful.
There you go. We've got our last question here from Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
What would you say to any kids who would like to be a poet?
Oh, hang on. Someone's chewing the cord. Oh. I guess that would, like, I believe that you're already a poet. You just don't know it, right? I believe that everyone has poetry inside them, but the difference between those people we call poets and those we don't is that the people we call poets have written it down, have finished it, and have sent it out into the world somehow, whether it's your school newsletter, whether it's your blog, whether it's sending it out to your family, whether it's getting it published in a book. That's the only difference, you know. What kind of poet you are will depend on how much you're willing to follow the thought that, you know, mistakes are made for making, and that it is a skill and a craft that you have to practice and practice and practice. And it's all about experimenting and trying to figure out what your styles are, what your favorite best styles are, what you're best at doing. So that's what that would be my advice, is to, you know, don't just think about it, write it, complete it, and then send it out to get feedback.
Awesome.
Wonderful. So, Selina, have you got time for a couple more questions from?
Yes, I do.
Lovely.
Yes, if that puppy doesn't wee on my floor again.
Okay. Thinking about your story now, what would you tell your younger self who always tied her head back and cared about what other people thought about her?
It's really hard when you're at a certain age, you know, because what I would say to my 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old self is don't care so much what other people think.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say, but I remember those days, and it's really hard. So instead, I would probably, rather than kind of terming it in the negative, like don't think about what other people think, I would say dig deep inside your own passion find out the thing that makes you feel the best about yourself and go deep, whether it's playing an instrument, whether it's writing songs, whether it's making books, poetry, whether it's sports, you know, really get fantastic at doing the thing that turns you on the most. And that's how, you know, that's the best way to counter bullying or the pressure to conform.
Okay.
Do you look back and think you should have just been proud of your hair?
What's that, Nick?
Do you look back and think you should have just been proud of your hair?
I was proud of my hair at home, but you know how school is, right?
Yeah. Everyone.
So I think I probably look back and think I did the best that I could with what I had at that very time, you know. We all do, yeah.
If you could go back in time, what would you do to change about the way you reacted to people calling you?
Sorry, Cassidy, I didn't hear any of that.
If you could go back in time, what would you do to change about the way you reacted when people were calling you names?
If I could go back in time, what would I do to...
What would you change about the way you reacted to people calling you names?
You know, I think, like, just to open it up a little bit, whenever you encounter bullying, because my younger sister was bullied at school and quite badly, like compared to her, I had nothing. She told no one. And she had to deal with that all on her own. And we wondered why she was starting to skip school and stuff. So it would be to you know, a problem shared is a problem halved. It would be to tell someone. I would have, you know, I probably would have told the teacher. I would have said, this is what's happening, and just let an adult kind of help me deal with it. You know, and I know that might have made things worse, but actually, yeah, I just believe that a problem shared is a problem halved. And I saw the results of when my sister told no one until like 10 years ago when she was 35. We were like, you dealt with that for years and you never told us? Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it wasn't my teacher, maybe my older brother, I would have told my older brother.
Yeah.
Because knowing my older brother, he would have gone and had a conversation.
Older brothers do.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you start writing books and sharing your story?
Yeah. I think, you know, I naturally know the world by writing it down. Some people, you know, kind of know the world in different ways. It's very natural for me to just pick up a pencil and just start blah, 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 blah. Like I write every day, all the time, everywhere. So it was just the most natural thing to start trying to share that writing. Yeah. But poems were my preferred form just because I could feel a sense of accomplishment once I finished a poem, because my longer stories would, as you know, never get finished.
Yeah, is that why Mophead's only got like, it doesn't have all of the pages like filled with writing? It's mostly got like, it's got like...
Well, the beauty with like Mophead is like a poem in the sense that empty space on the page is like breath in a poem. It's like the pause and the gap, and it lets you like fill in the gaps yourself with your own imaginative connection, right? And so, for example, this page, one of my favorite pages, because I tend to fill up all the pages with everything. That page there, you know, just the space around her emphasizes her loneliness. Like,
Yeah.
at school it was a different story, right?
Yeah.
She's got a lot weighing in her mind, and there's just space to let that sink in.
Yeah.
So rather than seeing space as incompleteness, I see it as, you know, very much part of the story, especially if you're drawing the pictures as well.
Yeah. Okay. Why did you decide?
Like, I love, that's one of my favorite pages too,
Yeah.
Yes.
because I've got the mop and then I've got the toko, which is, you know,
Yes.
Yeah.
the super duper mop.
Yeah. Why did you decide to write an autobiography?
Yeah, well, that I decided to write an autobiography because, to go back to my earlier point, there's no stories about, like, this was a new story. New Zealand had 10 Poets-Laureate before me, and I knew about them because I work in an English department at a university. I didn't really know about them at school. And so part of it was, I want to tell the Poet-Laureate story to kids so they know that one day they could grow up to be a Poet-Laureate, you know, that it was an option. So, and then that related to, I just want to tell the story of being, you know, an Awhakasi girl growing up in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and what it's like to be different, and then what it's like to be resilient in the face of, you know, bullying or the pressure to be the same, you know, and that we're all beautifully different. And that kind of lesson still applies when I teach my students who are 20 years old at university and trying to be writers. Like, they all think that they need to be the next J.K. Rowling, you know, author of Harry Potter books, or they need to be the next this type of writer. And of course, you need to read everyone and try on their styles to see if that suits you. But ultimately, it's your style that is going to make, you know, going to get attention in the world.
Last question coming up.
Do you have a specific place where you go to write your poems and stories?
Do I have a specific
Place where you go to write your poems and stories?
No, I don't. I used to think that I needed that, but I live in quite a large family with quite a few moving parts. So I learned that all I need is my journal, my paper, or my laptop. And some of my most productive places for writing have been in really busy cafes. I quite like that because I'm alone, but I'm in community, I'm together, right? My most common place is writing in the kitchen, where I'm talking to you now, because we have an open lounge kitchen. But the temptation to get up and eat chocolate is just gets a bit too much sometimes. But I can write anywhere. We are the caretakers of a 600-year-old pahutakawa tree. I've even written up in the pahutakawa tree on a really nice summer day. So it all depends on, you know, what you're feeling like and the environment that's going to help you focus and concentrate. Yeah. But what works for me is a little bit every day. And so I usually do it first thing in the morning, because if I wait too long, other people's business takes over. You know, there's always demands to do this. But it's that quiet half hour in the early morning that is like my golden time.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Selina, that's our questions for you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories with us. Very much appreciated. And we would like to wish you all the best in the Children's Book Awards.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much.
Yeah. You go.
Thank you, everybody, and all the best for your writing practice. Yeah. Don't think that only those people over there can be writers. It is a practice. You know, it's a skill that you need to exercise. And when you're trying to build muscles, what do? You need to exercise just a little bit every day. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You're very inspirational, and We hope you win, but we're really looking forward to Mophead too. So
Awesome, yay, thank you. And such beautiful questions. Yes, great. Ka kite anō, bye everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.